Hello and welcome to Mindful Living, where we explore the art of living with the intention, balance, and inner peace. I am Avik, your host, guiding you through conversations on health, meditation, mental well being, mindfulness, and the mind body connection. Each episode features expert insights to help you grow, heal, and thrive. So, take a deep breath, relax, and join us on this journey to a more mindful and fulfilling life. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast, where we explore mindfulness, mental health, and personal transformation. This episode is especially important as September is the Suicide Prevention Month, and we are joined by Lisa Sugarman, an author, mental health advocate, and crisis counselor with the Trevor Project. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, listeners, before we proceed on to the discussion, I would love to share a bit about my guest with all of you. So, Lisa is a three-time survivor of suicide loss and a storyteller with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is NAMI, NAMI. Her mission is to end the stigma surrounding mental illness and suicide by fostering open conversations about these difficult but crucial and important topics. And today on the Mindful Living podcast, we'll be discussing suicide prevention, raising awareness, and how we can all be a part of this vital conversation. So, Lisa, welcome to the show once again. It's an absolute honor to have you with us.
I'm so grateful to be here and to be able to just have this conversation because these are the conversations we all need to be having.
Definitely. Definitely. Lisa, so of course, this is September is the Suicide Prevention Month. So, can you tell us what inspired you to become such a passionate advocate for mental health and suicide prevention?
For me, it's very deeply personal. For me, you mentioned when you introduced me that I am a three-time survivor of suicide loss. And those losses began when I was very young. I was 9 years old when I experienced my first suicide loss. It was a family member, it was a cousin very close to me, both in proximity, living right around the corner, and also it was a first cousin, so someone I had grown up with. And years later, I lost my father. Actually, only lost my father a year after I lost my cousin. But my story has a little bit of an interesting twist to it, a little bit of an unusual nuance to it. So I did lose my father when I was 10 years old, but I didn't discover that my father's death was a death by suicide until I was 45 years old. So it was really learning that piece of my father's truth that put me on a completely different path. It really just for me brought me very, very much into the forefront of the mental health world and into this place of suicide and grief and loss. And it's a very unique space to be in within that mental health space. And, it really forced me to look very deeply at what causes suicide and how to help someone who may be suicidal. And it really just upended me, and it put me on a completely different path to really wanting to be there to support people who were in the same headspace that my father was in and my cousin was in, and also a friend who we lost a few years ago. So that's how I ended up where I am.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lisa, and more power to you. Many people they feel uncomfortable or they're unsure how to talk about suicide.
Mm.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to support a loved one but doesn't know how to start that conversation? I believe it's it's the most crucial role to play in that person's life.
You're right, it is. And you're also right that it's an incredibly uncomfortable conversation to start or to have or to consider, because for many of us, we're worried about the person who we feel is struggling, but we're afraid. We're afraid not only of confronting them about what we're seeing or feeling, but we're worried about what do we do if they say, I am struggling and I don't want to live anymore and I do want to die. And the best advice that I would give to anyone listening right now is be direct. I know it seems really scary and it seems almost counterintuitive to be very direct about something so scary, but that's exactly how you validate that someone is struggling and that someone is contemplating harming themselves or taking their own life, to ask directly using very specific language like, are you thinking of harming yourself or are you thinking of killing yourself? And that's a hard question to ask. It's a hard question to hear, but it's when you ask that person that question, something happens in that moment, and it validates that that person is struggling or is in crisis. And it shows that you're a safe space and it shows that you're someone they can talk to. So above all else, it's being very direct in the way that you approach someone who's feeling that way. And then if they come back to you and they say, actually, I am struggling, I am scared, I am hopeless or lost, that's when you can always turn to, for instance, the 988 suicide and crisis hotline, or you can turn to an organization like the Trevor Project, where I volunteer, or all of these other mental health platforms and organizations that have helplines and support that can help guide you in guiding the person you're trying to help.
Definitely, definitely. And you work as a crisis counselor with the Trevor Project, which supports LGBTQ plus youth in crisis. What are some of the unique challenges that LGBTQ plus individuals face when it comes to mental health and suicide risk?
Well, the LGBTQ community is a marginalized community. They're a community where they're often invalidated. They're not taken seriously. They are under tremendous amounts of stress, sometimes both at home or with their family, if perhaps maybe they haven't come out, or they have come out and they're coming out to a family who is not supportive of them. And then when they're in the mainstream, either maybe they're in school, maybe they're in the work environment, and they feel they need to hide their identity, they need to validate their identity. There are so many different triggers that someone within the LGBTQ community is facing on a day-to-day basis just for being who they are and being fearful of being who they are. So what we do at the Trevor Project is act as a support system, act as a place to hold space, act as a resource. We can help with guidance in terms of language and having conversations and coming out and owning who you are and your own personality and your own gender and sexuality. And so we're there to support the youth who are struggling with their identity, because it's a struggle, unfortunately, and it's going to be, I think, a while before it's not a struggle to come out and be part of the community at large.
Definitely. And what, since this is the Suicide Prevention Month, a time to remember the lives lost to suicide, acknowledge the millions more who have experienced suicidal thoughts, and the many individuals, families, or maybe communities that have been impacted by suicide. What, as us we can do during this entire time period and beyond as well, to raise awareness and help reduce the stigma around mental illness and suicide?
Well, one of the biggest things that we can do is what you and I are doing right now. We can start the conversation, bring the conversation into the mainstream, be talking about what the warning signs are that someone may be suicidal, passing that information along to people, passing the 988 number along to people. And we can be validating that it's okay to show up and not be okay. It's okay to be struggling and to seek out and take advantage of help. And those are the biggest pieces of this whole equation, how, obviously this is a month where we're amplifying suicide awareness and prevention, and the need to seek out resources, but we should be doing that the other 11 months of the year. This is really, just a month-long campaign, which is wonderful that so much effort and emphasis is put around this month, and all of these resources are being amplified. But we need to be doing that the remainder of the year in all of our casual conversations. We need to be checking in on our people. That's a big one, because there are two different kinds of people out there who are struggling. The people who are out there and it's visible. You see it. Maybe they are posting things on social media about being unhappy, or maybe they're sharing that in conversation. And so it's more obvious that they're struggling. But then you have another whole cohort of people who, like, for instance, my own father, who you would never ever know that they were struggling. And so we need to be checking in on people with pretty basic and simple language. Like, are you okay? Like, do you need support? Are you struggling right now? I mean, those are the things that we can all be doing this month and beyond to ensure that we've all got each other's backs.
Definitely, definitely. And Lisa, as a storyteller with NAMI, NAMI, you believe in the power of sharing experiences. So, could you share how telling your own story has helped you heal, and why is it so important for others to tell theirs as well?
Well, for me personally, storytelling has just been an incredibly cathartic experience. Once you get to a point where you've either processed your grief enough, or shared your grief enough within safe spaces in your life, and you can kind of put it out to a bigger, broader community, it becomes just as cathartic for the person sharing the story as it does for the person receiving it. Because on both sides of that, there is this aspect of commonality. We're recognizing that we are all struggling with something. We're finding bits and pieces of each other and what each other is going through in our stories and in our experiences. And it's the most basic way at that grassroots level to connect with people and to share your experiences. There's such relatability in so much of what we all go through, so much commonality in what we all experience in terms of life and death and grief and loss and fears and joys. And when we share that through our lived experience, it connects us in a very unique and different way. It validates, like, oh, I might hear something that you may share with me about something I may be going through, and I may just attach to some aspect of that. I may connect with some aspect of that that gives me either peace or hope or a resource or a direction. So, yeah, I mean, if, in my own personal opinion, I feel like storytelling is one of the most powerful tools that we have available to us to really get the message out into the world where it counts with each other. On that one-on-one or group level. That's how we make an impact.
Definitely, definitely. And moving back to with social media and internet, people often come across triggers or harmful content. How can we protect our mental health and create a safer environment online when it comes to suicide and mental health awareness?
Well, as someone who puts quite a bit of content relating to all of those things out into the world using social media, I, for one, am incredibly careful about how I put that content out, because what may be triggering for someone else may not be triggering for me or for you. So I'm personally very sensitive, and I know most people and most organizations who are putting the same types of content out are also putting trigger warnings out there to alert people. I think we need to be paying attention to those things. Not only do the people putting the information out there need to be conscious of putting those little disclaimers out to allow someone to pick and choose what they view or what they read, but we need to be paying attention as the people consuming that information and those stories and those posts and whatnot. We need to be keeping our own eyes open, kind of understanding what our own internal triggers are, and say, if I see something about grief or loss and I'm grieving, is this, you need to have that conversation with yourself. Is this going to be something that benefits me, or is this going to be something that upsets me? And we have to be conscious of that. And I think it's a very unique experience for each of us because we have a different threshold. So I think it's just everyone kind of collectively being aware of both ourselves and what we need and don't need, and content deliverers making sure that they're aware that people also get impacted by what we put out in the world, and we have to put those disclaimers so that people know what they're getting into before they're in too deep.
Absolutely. And I believe now this is one of the most crucial aspects to think upon. How can parents approach mental health conversations with their kids, especially in the light of the current mental health crisis affecting young people?
Well, I think that as parents, and I'm speaking now as a parent, and we have two daughters, and they're grown out of college and living on their own. But we've lived through pandemic with kids, and we've lived through tragedies and crises with children, and what we've always done, which I think has been very successful for just my own little family, and it's what I would tell anyone else: just be open and honest with your kids. I mean, there's obviously an age appropriate way to do that. You wouldn't say to a grade school student something that you would say to a high school student or a college student. So there's some modifying that needs to happen there, but we do need to be open and honest. And one of the things that we end up doing unintentionally, I think, as parents, is doing a lot of the talking, doing most of the talking. We feel like we have to constantly be talking at our kids, and we don't take enough time, I don't think, to just stop and listen to our kids and ask our kids, are you okay? If you're not okay, why aren't you okay? What's going on with you? If you know that there's a situation that's happening either in their personal life or in their, your community or globally, talk to them about that. Ask them how they feel. When we ask, questions, open-ended questions to our kids, most of the time our kids actually want to give us answers. They want to be the ones talking. We just don't give them enough of the space to do it. So I think that talking openly and honestly about the things that are going on, or if you see changes in your kids, look, teenage kids are not always that forthcoming with what's going on in their life. They come home from school and the door gets shut in the bedroom and you don't see them again until the next day. So, a lot of it too is really kind of recognizing your child's behaviors, and if there are sudden shifts, if all of a sudden they're more antisocial, or they're more agitated, or they're not behaving in a way that you're used to them behaving, those are triggers and those are signs. So, again, we have to be paying attention.
Definitely. And can you also tell us more about your work with the Trevor Project and how listeners can get involved or support their efforts?
Of course, sure. So I have been a lifeline counselor for the Trevor Project for about 2 years. So they have both a telephone hotline, which is your standard call a telephone hotline and you get a live person on the other end. And they also have a texting platform because not everybody is comfortable talking to someone on the phone. Sometimes people need a little bit of a buffer, and they find that texting allows some people to feel a more of a comfort level. So we offer those two things. And as a crisis counselor, I'm there to listen, to hold space, to offer resources if I have the capacity to give them, to really de-escalate someone who might be in a suicidal state of mind. We get those calls all the time, but we're not just dealing with suicidal phone calls. And I think that's a very big misconception within this whole world of crisis and suicide hotlines. People often don't call because they feel like, well, I'm not suicidal, so that's not for me to call. But that's not true. We take calls from people who are experiencing homelessness or abuse, or who are struggling with coming out in their sexuality, people who have lost a job or a home, or are grieving the loss of someone. So we do a lot of different types of supporting. Let's put it this way. If you are a human being who is struggling emotionally, you should call either the Trevor Project or the 988 Crisis Lifeline. And for people who are listening, if you want more information on the Trevor Project, go to thetrevorproject.org, or you can call us directly at 866-488-7386. And you can learn more about what we do and how we do it. And they've been around for over 25 years, so they have taken hundreds of thousands of calls and have saved countless lives. So I feel very privileged to be part of this organization.
Great. That's really commendable, Lisa. And before wrapping up, for someone listening today to this episode who may be struggling with thoughts of suicide, what would you want them to know right now?
Number one, if you're listening and you're struggling, you are not alone. There are a lot of people out there who don't have a support system, a partner, a family, a friend group, or a community. And it's hard because when you don't have those things, you don't have someone to lean into when you're struggling. But if you are one of those people who doesn't have someone there and available, you have a lifeline. You can call the 988 crisis hotline. You can text the crisis text line. You can reach out to the Trevor Project. We're here 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to listen and to hold space. And I would say take advantage of that if there is no one else in your immediate world that you can lean into. And if you do have places, people, resources in your own community that you feel safe in and comfortable with, reach out to those people, because the way that you feel right now, as hopeless and as bleak as it may be, is not how you're always going to feel. That's the thing. It's mental illness and depression hijack our common sense, and they make us believe that nothing will ever change, nothing could ever get better. There is no hope, but that's not true. There is hope, and there is another side of the way you're feeling, and it does change. So reaching out is a way that you get to the other side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, experience, and strength with all of us today. And your work is incredibly important, and we are grateful for the impact you are making in mental health and suicide prevention.
Oh, thank you so much for just helping to elevate this conversation and helping to share these resources that really are life-saving resources for everybody.
Definitely, definitely. And to our listeners, if you or someone you know is struggling, remember that you are not alone. Help is available, and you can contact the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988, or reach out to the Trevor Project for support at 866 488 7386, or text START, START, to 678 678. For more information, you can also check out the website samhsa.gov to understand about the risk factors, the symptoms, the triggers about suicide. And you can also refer the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. We'll definitely include all these resources in the show notes for you. And let's continue the conversation and work together to end the stigma surrounding suicide. Thank you to everyone for tuning into the Mindful Living podcast. Until next time, stay safe and take care and of your loved ones. Thank you.